Who, like me, is old enough to remember when MapQuest came along? And it seemed really great. You could put up an address in your fancy little computer and it would spit out for you directions to get from where you were to where you wanted to go, and you could print them out and hard copy, carry them around. It seemed great. Of course, the problem was if there was an unexpected problem with your route. So maybe a road was closed or there was an accident. It was a very, very predetermined route you were going to have to take. And if you needed to go off course, if things needed to change, if something on the roads hadn't been accounted for in its directions, you were kind of on your own. And so that's why, when Garmin came along, it seemed even more miraculous that if you took a wrong turn or ended up in an unexpected location, or if something had been torn up or there was construction, bam, it had the capacity right there in real time to tell you how to change direction and how to go a new way. The only problem with that Garmin doing that was that it always told you that it needed to recalculate in, sort of the most disapproving voice possible. And I still can hear its disappointment with me when it said the route that I had intended to take was no longer viable. Things had changed. Things were different. I needed to go a new way. And so it was going to recalculate that for me. But recalculating is a good thing, no matter what the Garmin voice says. Recalculating when things are on the move is actually a really smart and good decision. It's a helpful and necessary step that probably would be a really great idea for you and I to begin to do as we move into a post-pandemic world. As we recognize that things are changing, things are on the move. There's construction, and there's a detour, and there's a blockade, and we got to make new decisions and head in different and unexpected directions. We are contemplating how the disciples must have felt at the first news of the resurrection. And last week we looked at the Gospel of Mark, which really does end with the women just being like, and running away in fear. That seems like a, not as ideal ending, apparently, as some in the early church wanted. And there's a little add-on to Mark. But I love that ending where they're just kind of standing there going, okay, what now? And that is even present in Luke's account. The Gospel of Luke is written after the Gospel of Mark, and most scholars think, had access to Mark. It's kind of a starting place. But he fleshes out this experience of Easter morning. And you hear there the account of women who went to the tomb for that same purpose that we'd heard in Mark, and found there not Jesus. And they're astounded and they're surprised. And there is a heavenly messenger there, two heavenly messengers there that say to them, what are you doing here? You're in the wrong place. You've come to the wrong spot, because you're looking for the living and you're among the dead. Things have changed. You need to head in a different direction. And having heard that, they kind of seem amazed and surprised. And even if they are asking what now, they know there's no point in sticking around where they are. So they had and tell other disciples about what they've seen and heard. They recalculate. They'd gone for an intended purpose, and that purpose served no purpose any longer. And they were looking for the living among the dead. So it was time to change course. It was time to recalculate. I'm suggesting as we, think about what the next few days and weeks and months are going to hold for us, that an intentional and purposeful evaluation of where we want to be and why would serve us all well. If we would take a look at where we intend to go and what our objectives are, to ensure that we are looking for the living among the living and not among the dead. We come into a time that we hadn't expected to be in a year ago, little more than a year ago. And I still remember in the spring of last year, around Easter and in the days following, it didn't seem like it could go on all that much longer. And then it was, pretty clear that we were here for the long haul. And now we can look back with gratitude for the choices that others made to help keep us safe. We can look back with thanksgiving about the fact that, an all hands on deck response came from our medical personnel, from those people in essential services, and from the scientific community. And now lots of us are hopefully getting those shots in the arm that we so desperately need to bring us to a new and unique moment in the world's history. And, we're not quite there yet, but we can kind of begin to see the end is nearish. But now we have to make good decisions in this moment. I, like a lot of folks, would, love to just throw caution to the wind and say, I'm over it. And how dangerous could it be? But, we did not do all of this and make sacrifices and hunker down and make choices and that would prioritize those who are most vulnerable around us. And now's not the moment to do that either. It's really important that as people get vaccinated, they remember that protects them, but does not necessarily, we're sort of unclear about how much protection that provides to those they encounter and come into contact with. And so as we're still learning that, let's continue to be mindful of those who are most vulnerable and not to just do things because we can or we think we can, but to reevaluate and recalculate what makes sense now and what makes sense for where we want to be. I, for one, do not want to do this again. So maybe some of you are like, yeah, let's have a 2-month party and then like hunker down again. I am not up for that. And so I want to be thinking about and in conversation with others, not only about what I want to achieve in this moment, but where I want to go. And I think that's a really wise conversation to be engaged in at all sorts of levels. So for you as an individual, what is different now? What objectives and goals that you thought were really, really important to you a year and a half ago are maybe less essential? And what kinds of things are you hoping to, and now, what recalculations might make sense for who you want to be and how you want to be in the world in the months and years ahead? Because my guess is if you really stop and think about it, some things are going to have changed. We're not flinging open the doors and pretending, like we're not going to party like it's 2020. Who and how you want to be in the world ought to be different from this moment on. Surely we have learned some things. Surely we didn't do all of this and not have learned anything. And so if things are different for you, likely things are different for your family. Some people have really, really come to understand that they really want to be closer to their families, and that's going to change some things, maybe even where they live. And our workplaces hopefully have figured out a thing or two, like maybe we could be more flexible with people, and maybe allowing people to work remotely might have a lot of benefits. And how we treat each other and what we value about the work we can accomplish together might be worth a look. But largely, I'm thinking about who we are and how we are as a community of faith, as this particular little community of faith. Hunkered down here in the financial district for 250 something years, we are still hanging on. And that's not always been easy. And it's still not easy in lots of ways still. And we could be real focused on what we have to do to survive, or we could be real focused on what we have to do to be people who reveal and revel in the resurrection. We could be so consumed with just getting by that we don't get done what Jesus calls us to do. Or we can take this moment to recalibrate and recalculate and reevaluate where we put our time and our energy and our resources and what's possible in our city and particularly in our neighborhood. Here's the thing. I believe life in community makes a difference. I believe being able to be in relationship with people not just improves your lives, it enriches your lives. It makes your life bigger and fuller and more meaningful. It's not just, things are a little better. It's like your life is actually different when you seek to understand your faith. I think the questions are more important than the answers, and the opportunity to find a safe place to be thinking and talking and learning among other people who respect you and care about you. I think that's life altering. And I think that's the kind of common life we can and should be working to come to together. Worship grounds us for that, and it invites God into that process and into the process of us becoming who we want and intend to be, because we believe, that's who God is calling us to be. And it strengthens us and it brings us joy and hope. And we bring all of that to our common life together. So now would be a really great moment for us to think about how to get to there from here. How to move past being, worried primarily about our survival and the things that we need to fix, which are legion, to moving into the expectation that God is going to do remarkable things in our midst. And then we need to make sure we are not wasting any time or energy or resources looking for the living among the dead. Who and how we want to be is largely within our control, which is something the resurrection reminds us of, but the world is very, very ready to suggest is not true. So let's take a minute and recalibrate and recalculate and rethink how we want to get to where we want to be. In this season of Easter, as you know, we ask, what now? Let's take a moment to begin by acknowledging that things are different, and that can be scary and that can be challenging. And before setting off for whatever's next, let's ask some questions and assess our values and determine our destination together, so that we might do the work of the kingdom in the place that's been given to us to do. As we enter into what I really and truly believe is a remarkably new moment that I want us not to squander. I want us not to squander as individuals and as families. I want us not to squander as a community of faith, as a city, as a nation. Let's not squander what's possible in this moment, but let's really evaluate a new destination. Let's not just like pick up where we left off, but let's figure out how we want to be. And let's remember that the church is in a particularly useful location for that work, as people who are looking for the living among the living, as people who believe in the resurrection, as people who started in a moment of fear and awe and uncertainty. These women arriving at the tomb, the church starts in this recalculation. So we bring a gift to that conversation that should be taking place culturally and civically and nationally. That conversation should be taking place, but is so often drowned out by a lot of noise and nonsense. We are particularly well poised to offer something to this moment, because as Peter Gomes says, the Christian faith is a religion of the dawn, of the morning, of the new day. Read the opening accounts of the resurrection in the Gospels. They all begin in the morning, at dawn, at the start of a new day, at the rising of the sun. They all put away the past and face the future. For the direction of the Christian faith is forward, ahead of time, always ahead of where we are at the moment, and always into new and uncharted territory. That's where we're headed, ahead into new and uncharted territory. I want to get there successfully. I suspect you do too. And I want us to get there together. So let's stop and recalculate, and then forge ahead. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.